Welcome to Better Relationships, Better Work, where we explore how to make work better through the power of relationships. My name's Jason Lauritsen. I'm the author of 2 books, a leadership trainer, and speaker on a mission to fix how we treat people at work. Now, in this episode, we have some real talk about what it takes to have a good marriage and what we can learn from that about how to have better relationships overall. You're also going to hear the phrase, how you treat anybody is how you treat everybody. And you'll discover what that means in terms of how we show up with the other people in our lives and at work. And finally, we talk about what it looks like to normalize healthy disagreement at work as a means to build connection within a team. Now, my guest this week is Russell Robinson. Russell is program director and professional lecturer within American University's School of Public Administration. He's also the founder of Amplified Research, where he does research, analysis, and consulting around employee engagement and talent management. Now, this was a really fun conversation. Not only does Russell have great stories to share and a lot of wisdom in those stories, but I think he also claims the prize for most one-liners dropped in any single episode. It was fun. Please enjoy my conversation with Russell Robinson. Russell, thanks for joining me.
Jason, it's always good to see you, man.
As I warned you, we're gonna ask a few get to know you questions here to kind of get ourselves warmed up and let people get to know your kind of relational style or relationship style. And I think I want to start with this. When you think about your closest friendships, the people that are your best friends, what would you say is the quality that you most value in a friend, in a close friend?
Right. So I would say honesty in a sense. And when you talk about friends, I live in Washington, D.C. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. My friends go back to elementary school, right? And the cool thing about that is we are honest because for the guys, the men, we've been on this journey together where we were kids and then we played soccer together and Boys and Girls Club together and school together. And now we're parents, and in some cases, such as mine, we're grandparents. So we're having real conversations about things we are all experiencing. And I would say on top of honesty, I've just always been driven by curious people, right? I've been always driven by people who, let's get in the academic sense, who ask the probing questions. Well, why do you think this happened? And I think with friends, especially again, for those of us that are married or have been married, we've created this space where we may not see each other every day, but when we drop in, we can have these conversations that get into the reflection. Well, why did this work? Or why do you think it didn't work? And what we're finding is we're then able to instill these in our kids, especially our sons. And for my group, predominantly, especially our Black sons, so that they have a foundation that we kind of picked up along the way.
Mm. Well, I love I think too, I'm drawn to the question askers, and I think I am one of the question askers. I've had some reflections personally lately that I know that and I guess where I'm going is that when you are a question asker and you like being around question askers, the ability to be honest with yourself, honest with others is a non-negotiable. Because I find people drift in and out of my life based on how comfortable they are in what's going on. Are they being honest with themselves? Are they living in their own story, or are they hiding? Because when they're hiding, it's not fun to hang out with people like you and me that are going to ask you some probing questions, because
Right.
that's a pretty quick way to be like, yeah, no, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And so I think those two do go together, right? And if you put those two together, it makes for some pretty awesome relationships.
Yeah, and it's but it does get unfortunate sometimes because the carryover is like, look, I believe how you treat anybody is how you treat everybody. And when you talk to people about like, especially if a relationship hasn't worked, right? And oftentimes I'm like, well, it takes two to make it work. It takes two to not make it work. That doesn't mean it's 50-50. You know, in some
Mhm.
cases, it may be 90-10. You may have to own your 10%. What are you owning your 10%? And those that can't own it then go into the workplace and they turn into bosses and leaders who can never own things going not well. And in that case, there's never any chance for like dynamic transformational change.
Indeed, indeed, such an important. I guess it's a really important characteristic, I think, in everyone, but for sure, I think it makes sense that that would be something you value in your friends based on what I know of you. So let's flip that over then. What's the flip side of that for you, in terms of what's the quickest way to lose you as a friend?
Yeah. So the space I'm in now, like I'm very valuable about my time, right? Like I'm 54. So I remember when Michelle Obama turned 50, I think somebody was Oprah interviewing her, maybe Oprah Gail King. And she was like, my goal is to live life unapologetically. I'm not there. My mother is there. I am not there. And I know when I turned 50, I really was like, I need to be selfish about my time, right? So I think I don't mind people who are not available because people don't have a lot of bandwidth right now. If you're inauthentic or disrespectful about your time availability, and I would probably say the older I get, my tolerance for disrespect and incivility just really isn't what it used to be. Right. So, I'm more valuable and precious with my time and stepping into a place where, yeah, I really want to like I can connect with people. I can be available for people. Availability is one of my like three core values, but I have every right to be selfish about what I want and how I want to interact with people. And like my time and my availability is like I tell people like I'm very grateful. I'm very civil. I got a lot of pre Kim Kardashian Kanye in me, right? Like, so you need to be honored that I'm giving you my time. And if, and I'm honored like that you're giving me your time. But if I feel like you're taking my time for granted, yeah, I can move on. I can do other stuff. No worries.
Mm.
I wish you the
I love
best.
that.
It'll just be without me.
Well, and time, right? That's a theme or a consistent thing I've heard in my conversations about relationships. Something I talk about a lot is like it's the one thing that we all have the same amount of, and what you do with your time says everything about what you value and what matters to you. And so, being intentional and and a little precious about our time, I think is a good thing. It just takes us, apparently it takes us a long time to learn how to do that.
But that's how it
Because I hear
works.
that frequently. The older we get, the more that seems to be a big deal.
Well, yeah, listen, 54, I would assume I'm in the autumn of my life. I'm hoping I'm not in the winter of my life, but I've seen more sunsets than I'm gonna see sunrises. So it really gets to, on one hand, what do I want to do? What legacy do I want to leave with those I care about? Right. My grandson one day was like, Grandpa, you gonna die? I was like, well, eventually we all are, right? You know, Grandpa's trying to slow down the process. But it gets to this aspect of, and I know from a leadership standpoint, I always ask leaders, is legacy important to you? And it's amazing those who say it is and why, and those who say it isn't and why. But I know for my kids and my grandkids and my kids are, I have a daughter who's 32. My sons are 30 and 23, and my grandsons are 14 and 10. I'm much more in this space, like I'm trying to impart as much. knowledge and my experiences as I can, while respecting you are on your own journey. And I know with my 23-year-old son, whenever I talk to him, it's like, listen, I'm not really talking to you. I'm talking to the 23-year-old version of myself. I probably wouldn't listen to the advice I'm going to tell you at your age, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And trying to find that balance between letting them have their journey, but preparing them for, right. I've driven this course before, right? It's great when it's sunny outside, but your car has no windshield wipers. So, are you ready if it rains? And no, I got it. I got it. Okay, well, keep some windshield wipers around just in case.
Just in case. So, well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that as a foundation. I think that gives a really good foundation of who you are and how you think about relationships and how you show up with people. And so let's pivot to the first bit of homework that I assigned to you, which was to think about a personal relationship in your life that you feel is strong and healthy that we could talk about and maybe probe a little bit to try to learn from. And so I'm curious what relationship you came prepared to talk about today.
Yeah, so I mean, I would probably say it's my wife, because April, well, hopefully this comes out beforehand. Well, on April 4th of this year will mark 30 years to the day where I met my wife. Just in case this comes out afterwards.
Congratulations.
Back on April 4th, that's on my calendar because that 30 years ago, that day, I met my wife for the first time. I remember where I was. I remember exactly what she had on. This year is 26 years of marriage, so we dated for 4 years. But we're in this such a reflective place on where we were as two kids in their mid-20s who had, two kids, mid-20s, both from single parent homes, and how we have built this like foundation, and what we've done well. And what I love is I did the blended family thing before a lot of my friends. So my older two kids, they were 3 and 1 when I met my wife, and subsequently when we started dating. But this idea that she's going to hitch her destiny and the trajectory for her and two kids to this guy based on potential, and he's curious and he's funny, and I mean, she's gorgeous. So everybody tells me I outkicked my coverage, and I did. But I'm also like, I was just hanging out in the 6th round like Tom Brady, waiting to change a team's destiny. Uh, but just this aspect of the level of trust and navigation, and I think Jason, you're married, so when I talk to younger people new in the marriage journey, it's like, look, you think it's about love. It's love and your ability to navigate change. Because that picture on the wedding cake, right, you're going to have job issues, kids, health issues, death, hopefully death in the proper order. Death out of order throws things off. How do you stay aligned? Difference in purpose. And a lot of times what I found is the relationships and the marriages that don't work, it's not as much about the love as much they couldn't stay aligned as life threw good things and bad things at them. So like, I am so reflective of this woman who took a chance to alter and change her destiny by bringing in, we joke with our friends, like, we added water mix and I had a ready-made family. And I look at, because my older son's 30. I got married at 29, and you look back, it's like, man, yeah, I didn't know shit about myself. So leading, and you just kind of figure it out, and you navigate the ups and downs. So the fact that she is always she's always loved me. She's always been aligned to whatever I wanted to manifest for myself, even when I didn't know what it was. Is very humbling. It's very humbling to think about it. And there are people out there who don't have that, and there are people out there who yearn for that. And then there are people who have it and stay in that place. And I just feel for everybody where they are, whether they're there, not there, or wanting to be there.
All right. So let's
And
unpack that then.
I gave you a lot.
There's a lot in there. Let's I do want to pull this apart because I think you're right. I think that that a lot of people want, right, that they want to advance that. They want the kind of relationship that you're talking about.
They want to belong.
And so
they want belonging and connection.
Right. We all do. We all do. And so let's talk about how that looks for you. So when you think about, this 30-year journey that you've been on, and, you've obviously probably learned some things. You've developed kind of some ways that you and your wife handle when life throws you either sort of a big sort of positive bump that knocks you off track or a big negative bump that knocks you off track. What have you learned about like how that works? How does that work for you? What is the actual steps? Like what kinds of things do you do together?
Yeah, so I would say the positive bumps is to make sure that we stay aligned, right? And I remember when I was studying for my doctorate, one of the guys on my committee and I were talking, and he was like, "Hey, how's everything going with you and your wife?" And I was like, "Man, we're like ships passing in the night." He's like, "Stop." And he said what I said earlier, like marriage is about how you navigate change. And in this scenario, you are the change agent. So as the change agent, either you have to curtail your change or you have to bring everybody along for the ride, right? So at that point, my older two kids were out of the house. So it was like, okay, I need to incorporate my wife into reviewing my homework, bring her along on the journey so she knows the papers I'm submitting. My youngest son was a teenager. So then it became about Sunday was his day. I didn't do any study. I didn't do research. So I think you have to have besides my wife, I have a good group. I call it a circle of love. My friends I've known forever who are my support network, who can they are my blind spots at times, right? So they help level me. I think when times are a little challenging, it really gets to two things, right? For people my age, little rust in their beard, like me. I call it the Mike Brady rule from the Brady Bunch, right? So in the Brady Bunch, Mike never disciplined the kids in front of everybody else. He would bring them into his office, right? The little architecture office, right? So I think for my wife, I know for us, whenever things are challenging or spicy, it's best if we get out of the house and have a conversation, right? And we're empty nesters now, but what I found was to have those conversations when she's in the house, she's always going to be in mom mode, or I'm going to be in dad mode, and you can't have those type of conversations. I also think, and I've explained this to my kids, even when we argue, we are aware that we are on the same team. And when that is the case, then we're way more intentional to keep the argument on the situation and not let it delve into personal stuff. Does that make sense at all? Yes. So I think understanding that the person that you're having a disagreement with a teammate, and your goal is still to win, and for you, not for you to win, but for everybody to win, then that helps you stay focused on target. But it also puts you in a place where you can disagree while showing dignity and respect. Mm. And I think the one last thing I would say is, like, while we are a couple, we each have individual purposes and wants. So like giving that space where she can be herself and she's got a girl crew that's awesome. They all went to Georgetown together, and they can do their thing. And you can grow as individuals while growing as a unit. I'll shut up now because I could probably go on forever.
There's some really, really good stuff in there. I think we could mine that alone probably for an hour, but I am curious if, when you think about that, a lot of this is the sort of you staying in alignment or staying kind of in sync together, doing some different things, or you've talked kind of about mindsets primarily here, how you think about what you need to do. When you think about, if you have someone asking you for, a piece of advice about how to create a marriage like this, and they're looking for, give me a single kind of do this thing, and this will help you move on that direction. What would that advice be if you were to identify one or maybe two things?
Well, I'm gonna give you a few, but the first thing I'm gonna say is separate bathrooms. Like that's first and foremost. And for the married men out there, or if you want to be happily married, I tend to live by the belief that being right is never more important than watching the game. I've seen plenty marriages end because the guy has to be right all the time, right? I think, and again, I think how you treat anybody is how you treat everybody. So through curiosity and understanding, right? We are all products of our childhood, right? The good and bad of our childhood. That's who we are. And I think because we've taken the time to invest in how we made sense of the world, how we made sense of our upbringings, how as children we experienced love, harmony, and conflict, and what we want to replicate and what we can't do, right? So I was raised by an alcoholic, so I don't drink. I mean, I did for a little while, but never in college. But she and I were talking one day, and I said, I was just raised in a house where seeing a parent drink too much never ended well, right? And now, not just my wife, right? When we go and do family nights with friends and we'll do games, there will be drinking games, and then there'll be games with it, for me, my doctor probably hate to hear this. Instead of a drink, I'll have a handful of M&Ms, right? So understanding how we were grown, and then that goes into work, right? People want connection. So when you understand the people you work with and how they were raised and how they make sense of the world and how they act in harmony, how they act in conflict. I have a real good friend where I had to stop her one day because she was getting all these accolades and she was moving on to the next thing. I was like, hey, do you ever stop and smell the roses people give you, or do you just put them down and move to the next task? And she was never in a space where you stop and smell the roses. So I think getting curious about how people see the world. And I think for me, a big aspect of everything for me was my youngest son. I coached him in soccer from U5 to U12. And listen, if you've ever coached kids or led a scout troop or led a band or been a music director, if you're good, the level of intentionality you put into communication, motivation, and criticism, you can manifest that into everything. And here's the deal. I mean, I'm on like my 8th career pivot. I got my undergrad degree in accounting. I've got a CPA license. Right now, I'm a university professor doing leadership and organization. At my core, I'm still this U5 to U12 coach, and everybody is one of my players. And being the players, you understand what they're looking for in life, right? Who's on the team because they've got college level talent? Who's on the team because it's just off season from football? Who's on the team because it's just social and the rest of their friends are on the team? Who's on the team who's not good? Great. How do we set ourselves up to succeed as a team and everybody knows they're contributing in some way? And I think how I approach my relationships with those I love and my friendships are pretty much the same, Jason. I mentioned earlier my values. I live by three values, right? Trust, confidence, and availability. You're in the OD space I'm in. You can't have connection or anything. You can't accomplish a lot if you don't have trust with people, right? I just believe as this U5 to U12 coach that when people are feeling confident, they perform better in any setting. And I think there's a level of intentionality that says, I'm going to make myself available for you. And when you do that with people, how you treat anybody is how you treat everybody. In any setting, you and should get the best outcomes.
This webcast is sponsored by my longtime friends at Inspiring Workplaces. Now, if you are someone who's working to create an engaging and inspiring workplace for your employees, and of course you are, that's why you're here, then listen up. Inspiring Workplaces is a global community of tens of thousands of HR and employee experience professionals that you can join for free. As a member, you will gain access to thousands of articles and videos and podcasts and events that will help you change the world by changing the world of work. They are also home to the Inspiring Workplaces Awards that recognize the best workplaces in the world. You can learn about the application process at their website. So please go visit inspiring-workplaces.com to learn more and to join the community. That's inspiring-workplaces.com. Let's pull this kind of tangibly into the workplace, because there's a bunch of stuff here, and you've mentioned a couple of things already, but I'm curious, like, because I want to bring this back to like some really practical things that people can sort of learn from what you've shared with us about how you have approached relationships and what's worked and what you've learned there. And I think one of the things that I want to sort of dive in on a little bit is how to, as a leader, back to this, when you talked about sort of challenging times come, if we do have to have conflict or disagreement or an argument, that we need to make sure we remember that we're on the same team, and that informs how we show up in that conversation, how we show up to each other. How do you practice that? What kind of foundation can you set as a manager or as a leader with your team, or even if it's with colleagues, coworkers?
Yeah.
How do you do that in a practical way at work when you're in a marriage, the fact we're on the same team is a lot more clear, right? When we're in a family, right? That is a pretty easy thing. When we're at work, sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not as clear. Sometimes it feels like we're at odds. So like, how do you establish that? How do you make sure that's the case?
Yeah. So I think there's some assumptions here, right? It's easier if you're curious, right? It's easier if you believe in learning, right? And I think what I've seen from leaders prior to university life, I worked in the federal government. I found first level supervisors were more willing to learn than established senior leaders who wanted to do everything the same way. So you have to normalize, after those assumptions, you have to normalize the problem. You have to normalize disagreement. What that means is I may not have the best idea. In some ways, like technology, right? Your cutting edge technology shouldn't be coming from somebody 54 years old. How do I look to, my youngest son is in social media now. That's where I go, where I need advice, but you have to create this space, this voice culture where we can disagree, or I want disagreement. And if it's new to you, then let's say you're working on a project. let's say Jason and I are competitors in something, and I'm looking at my team, right? We have this plan to do X. If you're not comfortable critiquing me, hey, tell me what Jason's team is doing different, right? What are they doing different than us? So you normalize that in. As a leader, as a supervisor, I have found normalizing turnover. We are all going to leave at some point, can create a space in a world where when people are evolving and changing, maybe maybe their purpose changes, maybe what they want to do changes, but having that conversation that says, if I'm a good leader, eventually you're going to leave me for better, greener pastures. And that takes, I think, it's kind of like, about what did they say? You don't fix a roof on a rainy day, right? You've got to lay that foundation as part of normally what you're doing. And then when that challenging time comes, then someone can say, hey, it's okay to disagree with Russ. Like for me, I'm big on, like, I know I mentioned my 3 values. I hold those values dear to me. My beliefs, they're what I believe now. If you give me better data or things change, that belief could change. So by normalizing that in the workplace and letting people know they can disagree with you and disagree with you without retribution, that's huge, right?
So let me stop for a second and ask you a question about that, because I do think normalizing it, I get that. So when you say that, does that mean as a leader that you should be saying, like, fairly regularly inviting people to offer critique? Is it inviting, you mentioned earlier, like normalizing the fact that you don't have all the answers. So say, sort of saying that out loud to your team and saying, I don't have all the answers, so I need you to speak up. Or when you feel like we're missing something, we need you to speak up. I'm curious, is that what you're talking about when
Yeah,
you say normalizing?
you normalize it. That means, hey, I don't know the answer, but I know we can get there together. Let's get into change management. I remember I had an employee who was from the Middle East, and she was born and raised in a country where they respected authority. So at no point would she disagree with me. And one day we were in an internal meeting, and I said something, and I could look on her face, and I knew I said something wrong. And she didn't speak up, but I knew she was pretty introverted. So I didn't call her out in the meeting. Afterwards, I went to her cubicle. Hey, and she said, yeah, you said the wrong thing about the wrong customer. I said, hey, I need you to speak up, because if I go out and I'm forward facing a customer saying the wrong thing, that's not good for all of us. I don't feel comfortable. Then I would start to intentionally say the wrong things in meetings. And then finally it happened, and she spoke up, and she gave me her idea, and we found a way to implement it, and that fueled it. So it takes intentionality. It takes a lot of change management, because how that worked for her may not work for somebody else. But this is where you're great. But if you're doing, as a leader, if you're doing these check-ins, you can incorporate understanding how people react to it. You can incorporate reflection. Reflection gives you the great aspect at an individual level to say, what could I be doing better as a leader? As a team, we just finished out this project. Right. We got survey data that says we got 80% satisfactory. Why? What do you think we could have done to get 90? All right. If you build that in and you normalize that you can have this disagreement, healthy, respectful disagreement, and that people are empowered to think and be creative and be curious, then you can make the magic happen.
I have one last request of you or question here, which goes back to this notion or conversation we had earlier where you said, so much of, you were talking about your own experience and how what happened to us, how we grew up, what our background is, that's all that we carry that with us. It affects how we show up. It affects how we see things and think about things and react to things. And so knowing we started clear at the beginning talking about curiosity and probing questions. So I'm wondering if you have any favorite questions that you use when you're meeting someone new who you're going to be working with, or maybe that's going to be working for you. that helps you start to get into that a little bit, to learn about them? Or do you have some go-to questions that you can give us as a way to maybe start having those conversations where we can learn about people and those things they bring to the table?
Yeah. So I think from a change management standpoint, I think it's easier if you start off with a feel good, right? What are you most proud of? Answer it however you want. You ask people what they're most proud of and why, right? So, and then you ask probing questions, taking it back, right? So with leaders, I have found when I'm doing research, so much time is spent on them as the senior vice president, as the CEO, as a senior executive, that when you get them down to, no, tell me when you first became a supervisor. What was that like? They light up, right? If it's something about, if they answer, I get a lot of, I'm most proud of my kids. Why are you most proud of your kids? Really? Is that similar or that dissimilar to how you were raised? And you just listen. But if you start with a space of tell me what you're proud of, and in essence, why are you proud of it? Why that makes a difference to you, then you start to build that up. And then conversely, if it is from a critique, so my daughter is 30 and my mother of my grandkids 14 and 10, to critique her parenting, I have to start off and be vulnerable with a story about how I parented her in an incorrect way, a separate situation, right? Because I've shown vulnerability as in like I've made mistakes, I'm sharing my mistakes. So if it's critique, it's starting from a place of vulnerability. If not, start with what are you most proud of? What are you most proud of and why?
I like that. And I think one of the things that I found, if you want to try to pull them out of the sort of work mind and invite that sort of learning about them as a person predating when work became their primary identity, one of the things that I actually have to credit our mutual friend Joe Gerstant for this one, because he brought this up in a group at one point. He started asking people, where is home for you?
Yeah.
And so you'd start and it's like, well, home is, and they would say, and everybody, it's amazing the range of variability that people will offer. And then the follow-up question is, well, is that where you grew up? And they'll be like, well, no, that's actually not where I grew up. And then bam, this whole story spills out of them. And then if there is well, yeah, that is where I grew up. It's like, well, what about that makes that feel like home for you when you think of what home is? And just that exchange of those three questions can give you, like, crack a door open. And not everybody will walk through it. Some will give you a little bit, some will give you a lot. But I just have found that to be a really good a good tool or device to use too when you're trying to get people. And it's a fairly safe one for work or out of work or any place. Maybe a door opener to get into a deeper conversation with people.
Yeah, and I find, so you and I are a little bit to the right of the median when it comes to curiosity, right? So on a scale of 1 to 5, if I'm looking at Jason on a scale of 1 to 5, Jason's probably a 4.2. How do I get him to a 4.8? If Jason's a 1, the great victory is maybe if I get him to a 2 or 2.5, at least where he may ask those type of questions while respecting privacy, right? I had a coworker once who was very introverted. She was very introverted. I knew this, and her mother had a health challenge, and we were doing a check-in, and I was like, hey, look, I know you respect your personal space. I'm not trying to invade your personal space, but with this health challenge you have with your mother, if you ever want to chat, I'm here. If you ever need to work from home, just let me know. No questions asked. And she came back and she was like, I respected the fact that you asked about me in a way while you respected my privacy. So again, it gets to understanding what's different. But yeah, what is home? Tell Joe, I'm about to copyright that. I'm going to take that and incorporate that into everything. But the one thing
It's
I
a
would
good
say
one,
is,
right? It's a good one.
and the thing about that is, when you ask a question like that, after let's say you ask me that in a Zoom, right? And then we log off. On the drive home, I'm going to be thinking about where is home? Or then you're going to have a conversation later on that night. And that's when you know that you're as a leader or as a parent, that you're hitting the sweet spot, is the understanding that you may not get a reaction when you want to get a reaction, but you may get a reaction down the road.
Mm. Russell, thank you. Thank you for making time for this conversation. I know it's not the conversation we have all the time, but I think the more we dig into relationships and try to understand them, the more we can make work better. And so I'm really grateful for your curiosity and your availability to join me today for this conversation. So really appreciate it.
No, you've sparked some stuff, man. I gotta take some notes. And what is home, man? I'm about to take that. I'm gonna take that from Joe. I'm gonna let him know. I'm gonna send him a text. Tell him it's mine now. Jason, anything you want, man. I love what you're doing with this, because this helps people foster better connections in a time where people are saying we need connections, both in the workplace and also at home.
Amen. See you again soon, friend.
Yes, sir.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. More importantly, I hope you learned something from the episode that can help you right away. Now, if you'd like to reflect on what you can learn from your own healthy, positive relationships to make work better, I've included a link in the description below where you can access and download what I call the relationship reflection exercise. This includes the same questions that I ask each of my guests to reflect on prior to our conversation on the webcast. Also, if you found today's episode valuable, I'd ask 3 quick favors of you. Number 1, please like the episode. By liking the video and adding a comment if something spoke to you or stood out to you as really significant, you give me some great and valuable feedback, but you also help others find the video. I'd also ask you to subscribe to the channel. That does 2 important things. 1, it makes sure that you won't miss any upcoming episodes, and it sends me the message that you like the kind of content that I'm creating here. And finally, please share this video with someone who you think might benefit. What better gift can you give someone than the gift of better relationships and a better work experience? I'm really grateful that you were here today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.